A very, very warm welcome, everyone. I hate Hari doing this on a Saturday, but he says, Deepak, Saturday is the most relaxing day for doing, discussions. Nobody in a rush. I said, yeah, but Unmesh, who is absolutely an outdoor guy, he has to find a hotel corner to do this for us. But I'm glad that you all managed to join in. So we keep chatting about evolution, and we say that it's such an interesting phenomena, and it becomes way more interesting when we can actually see it happening in front of our eyes. And over the last few years, the pace of evolution of our world has gone up so much that even before we get used to something newer props up. And a case in point, our last 18 odd months or the last decade, for a broader view, the way technology has changed the landscape of how we work is such an interesting study in itself on the human need to push forward and probably explore. But even if we keep the lofty ideas aside for a moment, the way technology has come up with solutions for the continuity of our businesses during what was undoubtedly one of the biggest global crises we have all seen is simply tremendous. But has evolution only been in technology? Or have we also evolved as human beings? And I think, of course, we have. Probably not at a pace that we might all like, but we definitely have evolved. Case in point, the aspect of DEI. It's sad that even today we need to stress on the importance of diversity and inclusion. A point so natural that it should be as normal as breathing, but we're still talking about it. But having said that, I'm glad that today we are all here to have a discussion on the evolution of the three aspects that are quite intrinsic to the corporate life and work culture, which is collaborative technology, DEI, and meaningful engagement with our teams. And before we go further, I would like to give a very, very short intro of all our leaders. So we have Jayanta Prabhu. Jayanta has been with the SR Group for over 2 decades and is a group CIO for SR. And he also heads the business for India and SAARC region for AGC Network. And Jayanta has been a very critical part of SR's journey. And he has seen the company growing from a $4 billion company to today $37 billion company. So Jayanta, very, very warm welcome to you, my friend. Next participant is Sayamdev Mukherjee. Sayamdev is the Vice President for Planning and Control at United Breweries. And Sam has been a part of the growth stories of several large organizations such as Ericsson, Philips, ABP, ITC, and ICI India. And it will be great to hear his views. Sam, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
And then we have Sudhanshu Mishra and the CHRO for Tata Coffee. And over the last 2 decades, Sudhanshu has worked in different industries such as travel and tourism, steel, aircraft manufacturing, computer hardware, automotive, IT, ITES. And I think his views as a CHRO would be extremely critical in today's conversation. So Sudhanshu, a very, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
And finally, we have our brilliant moderator for the day, Unmesh Pawar, a highly respected and towering name in the human resources and transformation space. And Unmesh has been a big part of this, has played a big part in the series of conversations that we've been doing over the last few weeks. And he's today an investor and a mentor to startups. And his last role, Unmesh, was a CHRO for KPMG's India entities. And over the last 2.5 decades, he has held leadership roles with Accenture, Mastek, Tata, and PLS. Unmesh, a warm welcome to you, my friend. And with that, now I'll hand over the screen to Unmesh to take forward the proceedings, and I'll probably pick up the best seat to hear this outstanding panel today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Deepak, and thank you very much, Hari, and thank you to CEO Lounge for getting us together. Just to reconfirm, can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes, sure.
Great. All right. So morning, everybody. Morning, Jayanta, Sayamdev, and Sudhanshu. Did I pronounce your name right, Sayamdev?
Absolutely. Thank
Great.
you. I know it's a little bit of a tongue twister.
It's different. Sam, what does it mean? Sayam, is that where it comes from, or where does it come from?
Just to give you a background, without getting too much into the personal details, my mom was a professor of Sanskrit. So you can understand where the name stems from. So it means another name for moon, which means god of evening. That's what it means.
Interesting. Okay. My little bit of understanding of Hindi was telling Sayam and Dev. So that together was Sandhi Samas together for me, but clearly that is not what it is. All right, great. And of course, Sudhanshu, good to see you. Our paths haven't crossed, but good to make the connect. Yeah. So we've been on, this is a series of discussions that we're doing. This is, I think, the 6th or 7th in the round that we're doing with the C-suite facilitated by CEO Lounge. And what we're really trying to do is to look at what the pandemic has thrown in front of us and evaluate various aspects of it, right? Impact of this on culture of organizations, impact of this on leadership, looking at what leadership has been, what leadership will need to be, looking at tech and tech enablement in this whole space of how we've been able to navigate the pandemic so that we are much more better prepared to address future such situations that we'll encounter. And as a part of that, also unravel certain elements around employee engagement, looking at culture of the organization and inclusion. So there's been a series of discussions. Today, I think is the 6th or 7th. Hari, is the 6th or 7th of the discussions?
This is the 6th one.
Okay, this is the 6th one. Okay, yeah. Great. So this is the 6th of the discussions. In today's discussion, I want to dive into 3 areas, right? One is really the space around work tech, and I will lay the context for it, because I truly believe that what's happened over the last 18 odd months is what was traditionally considered as distributed, broken down systems within an organization have suddenly taken a very different meaning in an organizational context. And therefore, what is the role that it is playing in enabling productivity, enabling collaboration into the organization? So how HR tech has really become work tech in the flow of work. That's the first element we want to dive into. The second one is really talk about this whole space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Organizations that have lineage into the US have been a bit more aggressive on this agenda, but talking about India and some of the nuances of the D&I agenda within India. And then finally, third, really look at the space of employee engagement and how employee engagement space has evolved over the last few years. And especially so, how do you see this changing going forward and the role of tech in enabling managers to better manage their teams effectively? So those are the 3 areas that we want to really dive into. Opening up with the first one, really, which is around whole space around work tech. And I think, and I possibly have used this far too much into this discussions. And Hari, I think I'm sure tired of listening to my joke. But as the joke goes that, most of us as CHROs, every year as a part of the annual budgeting process, budget for certain technology investments. So we will work with the CIO in the hope that we can put up a meaningful business case that we can then take to the CIO and thereby get support through the CFO. And what ends up happening more often than not is the CFO basically pours some cold water on it to say, well, this is priority, but not as much of a priority. Let's invest in these small things right now, and let's not go for this big bang approach. But that was great. But suddenly what the pandemic has done, in my mind, has translated all of this into organizational critical stuff. And I say it's organizational critical because what was traditionally HR tech has suddenly now taken the shape of what I call as work tech. Because suddenly what was used as vehicle of communicating with employees has become a communication tool for the organization C-suite. Performance management system now suddenly has become a tool where an organization can effectively talk about change operating model, change structural models in the organization, and communicate seamlessly to say what expectations the organization have from people. Project management, managing productivity, all of this now suddenly has been laid on the platform of what was traditionally called HR tech. So I think in my mind, that has been a big shift over the pandemic because that's what the ask has been over the last 18 odd months. Now, I want to first go, Jayanta, to you And looking at your lens and the SR world and your fellow CIO community folks, what are you seeing the shift happen in the work tech space from what was traditionally broken systems, and finance had its own tools, HR had its own tools, tech had its own tools. Now suddenly the integration, the ask is for the integration of all of this and being able to seamlessly provide for leadership dashboards or leadership view, if you be. Jayanta, first to you.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning to all fellow panelists here, and thanks Deepak Curry for giving this opportunity. See, when we are talking any automation experience or anything within any organization, there are three key areas. One is the people, second one is the process, third one is technology. Means I come from a technology area as a CIO. Means my role is that how I can deploy or implement different technology or cutting edge technology to support business. Along with that, it's not alone I can do something. Okay. See what is changed. So people side, if you really ask me, during pre-COVID period, means a lot of people want to have face-to-face meeting. Means they don't want to use a collaboration tool. Means if anybody is telling, they are telling, boss, this room you come there, we'll have a face-to-face meeting, we'll close this or whatever the discussion or whatever projects and everything. So that's the way. And the second part, when it's coming in personal life also, means you can talk to anybody for 1 hour for any aspect. Then you are telling boss, hum log hotel mein milte hain, then we'll close that discussion. That is the way, that is the Indian culture. So it's not that anything they are doing wrong. And when you're talking people in any organization, there are three kind of people. One is that Gen Next people. They want to start any project, any initiative with the tech. Means for tech is taking priority when they're discussing anything. Second kind of people is that they're looking for a use case. Means if I want to do this project or initiative, where it is implemented, that question is asked to CIO, that is question asked to all the OEM partners also. You tell me, means if I want to implement in SR, take an example, have you implemented in Reliance or have you implemented in Dabur? What is the use case? You give me a use case, then I'll take that initiative forward. Third kind of people, they're telling, I have a lot of people available in my team. Why I need to use tech? Means I'll put more bodies to resolve or solve the issue or take that initiative. I don't want to implement or adopt technology. These three kind of people, what we have seen in any organization. And when it is coming technology, means that two things. One, organization means pre-COVID, they already taken initiative, multiple initiatives, and they deployed all the technology for bringing the employee engagement. Second, that to bring the experience or improve their overall business or meet the competition. Means that one of the organization is SR. I'll come to that, how we have done that. And second kind of organization, they use the opportunity, means they have seen pre-COVID, post-COVID situation. When government is announced the lockdown, no employee can travel, no employee can visit office. And that time they learned something and they want to deploy multiple technology. If you ask me today, CIOs are working almost 12 to 16 hours. Since there are multiple technology requirement coming from each function, means a lot of people, they may be found use cases. A lot of people, they may be found tech is the way to go. Means it's not depending on people. Okay, that is the way. And today in SR, what we have done, SR is the early mover in multiple technology. So take a simple example. We are the first one to implement SuccessFactors. That is the HR tool. Means all the HR fraternity people are here. Means we are the first one to implement HR tool. Means I got a great tech supporter like Adil Malia, who is supported us on HR side, technology side. I have involved, my team is involved. We have implemented a HR SuccessFactors end-to-end. And over the 3 years, we have used that. Then we found some gap. Then we have moved to Oracle SCM. Means today we are deployed the Oracle SCM end-to-end. And end-to-end HR process is automated. This including that employee management side. There is the credit we are giving. There is a portal available. There are multiple things. And to summarize everything, tech is the way forward. Means if you really ask me. And only IT or CIO can't do that. It has to be teamwork. each business, they have to come out with their requirement clearly, and they have to define the process. And tech can what I'm telling, take that process to next level by automating a lot of things.
Thank you very much. I think this is really useful, Jayanta. I think, Sandy, I'm going to come to you and look at what has been your experience through the UB group, and what do you see as the role, future role of UB, of work tech really enabling managers to truly do a good job of getting to have a pulse on the productivity, impact, and overall well-being of their employees. Sandeep?
Sure. On this productivity impact, if I may, with your permission, deviate a while and bring in the aspect of DEI with technology. I mean, this is not so much in context of UB, but a general perception. I mean, this entire concept of productivity, or the way we look at it, is, for the lack of a better word, through an elitist lens. And why do I say this? You see, when technology came in, and I'm a big supporter of it, and without technology over 18 years, over the 18 months, we would have been, business would have been as relevant as the dinosaurs had technology not been there. I fully recognize that fact, and no aspect of what I'm saying is against technology. But what I'm trying to share the thought process is, how do we view technology? And that is where I'm saying the consciously using the word elitist lens. If you remember, I mean, you are a CHRO and Sudhanshu is also in the HR function. So I'm possibly ill-equipped to share this view, but I thought I'll just put it on the table for your evaluation as well. One of the things which we always believe that in context of diversity, the ladies, and again, I'll come back to that diversity lens, whether gender is the only aspect of diversity, but for the moment, let's stay with that concept, that if they were able to work from home, then possibly the percentage of ladies in the workforce would go up. But what did we see over the 18 months? It's just the reverse. If anything had happened, it has really gone down. So what our perception of technology versus productivity, I draw this point to understand that, to bring out the nuance that we can't do a simplistic one-to-one correlation. Having said that, going back to the larger question of productivity vis-a-vis technology, I mean, right from the days of Industrial Revolution, it's a no-brainer that with technology, every time the productivity has gone up. We are going gaga over the last 18 months. But if you see this is in a history of time, this has been a constant trend. Now, coming back to the current scenario of productivity and technology, I think that element of personal touch is missing. Having said that, I also read an interesting study, and I don't know how much this is relevant. I'll put my 2 cents on this. One, they said that with technology, possibly the introverts have come out better. It has done better for the introverts than the extroverts, because they say that for the workplace sort of culture, it is a space created for the extroverts and to be thrived by the extroverts. Now, in an Indian cultural context, I don't know how far of that is true, because even now, whether it's a physical meeting or the meeting guided by technology, there are some people who are more vocal than the others, without naming them. But I'll share with you a different perspective, and I fully appreciate where this thought process is coming from. You may be aware that we in UBL right now going through a integration process with Heineken. They have upped their stake from 49 to 65% or whatever. So going back to what Deepak said, I think Hari possibly knew that, so he has organized it on a Saturday, because Mondays till Fridays are pretty chalked, and also Saturdays, Sundays. But set that aside, in our integration meetings, typically when such integration happens, possibly folks fly down from Amsterdam and spend 2-3 months here. Now, that not being the case, now we do all these meetings on the platform Microsoft. And one of the cultural nuances or the learnings from me is, in that meeting, if somebody has to speak, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Teams software. There's a icon which says that you can put up your hand. And that was a complete cultural shift for me, that that's how meetings are to be conducted. And coming back to again the question of productivity, that makes the meeting much more productive than what it's if a manual meet, if it's a physical meeting where people tend to talk over each other. Here, the discussion is focused. One person talks, the rest listen, and the less chip in. So my 2 cents on productivity vis-a-vis technology, a pretty long answer to a short question, but I don't know whether I've tried to stick to the point in this context.
No, I think Sammy, great insights, right? So, I mean, on one side, there's a big belief that technology has been a leveler from a gender standpoint by virtue of making it accessible for people to work from anywhere. But at the same time, it's also been difficult on women in general. So I think very valid point. Sudhanshu, coming to you, right? I think if you can unpack this a bit, right? I think a lot is being talked today about tech in the flow of work, which effectively means that we got to be able to bring technology, make technology accessible to people such that everything is in the flow of. And the example I give people is, I don't know how many of you use Grammarly, right? But Grammarly is an app that sits real time on your Word documents or your email and corrects your grammar real time, right? It's in the flow of work. You don't have to go and do a spell check later. It checks grammar, it checks spelling, it checks everything and allows you to do a better job of business communication. So in the same tone, a lot is being talked about saying tech needs to be in the flow of, and therefore learning needs to be in the flow of work. For example, I'm doing something and I get stuck. There needs to be something that pops up at that point in time, which can tell me, Unmesh, you're stuck with this. Here are 2 people you can connect with, or here is information that you can rely on, or here are the 2 trainings that can help you do this, right? So talk to me a little bit about your worldview of how HR tech has become work tech. And talk to me then about saying, where do you see the future of work tech evolve from your lens? So Sudhanshu,
Thank you, Unmesh. I think, what I'm going to talk, it may not be new to any one of you, but I want to do just contextualize a little bit on this. So let me start with the keyword you've given to me, which is productivity. Then I'll go to this HR tech, work tech, if you allow me to do so. So I'm actually debating a little bit from Jayanta's statement that there are 2 resources in the world. One is human resource. I'm keeping everything else, the other resources. Okay. So if you look at, all of us have been working for decades. You can predict the other resources. Can you not predict how the top will behave, or how the specs will behave, or how this machine will behave? We know it will stop, or it will continue, or it will, but we cannot predict the human behavior. So productivity for human and productivity for the other resources is really, really different. Now we are discussing technology usage in 2 contexts. If you look at, I'm taking again to Jayanta's point of view, when budgeting happens, or when things get discussed, most of the time CXOs, they focus on the predictable side of other resources, and they never ever focused on the human resource productivity, which is not predictable. Can you predict whether I will be able to really speak better today? Even I cannot predict. It will depend on what my family situation is, whether there is electricity, or whether I had a good breakfast, or my head is aching. So very, very difficult to predict the outcome of a human behavior, outcome of a human being. But you can predict at least to closest more than 70% for any resource. Now we have to understand, suppose you have to look at investment which has happened over a period of time. Let us look at 100 years of evolution of technology. The maximum evolution has happened on the productivity of other resources, not on the human resources, on the technology part. If you look at, you will be knowing, and of course all colleagues will know about it. The investment of HR technology was always taken the last priority. I was in the car company, I was IBM, I was, in Mahindra also. I have looked at, this will be always the second runner. Okay, what is that to deal with? We will deal with the humans, as if everybody knows human. And then look at any manager, they feel they know much more than the specialist in human resources. because they have dealt with people. I'm not doubting their capability. I'm not demeaning anyone as a human being, but this investment of technology in people or the human, I'm not talking about human resource function, human capability development, human productivity enhancement, hardly anything has happened now. So suppose you have to deal with this, how do we really, what we are talking about right now is mostly because of a pandemic, laptops are given, meetings are happening. These are the two things actually people, I think, change has happened. But I see the other change. I think many of you will be kind of experiencing that. Now, seniors are thinking that people should come back to office. Difficult to manage. That means this technology, what we are talking for last 10-15 minutes, it's actually not supporting going forward. How long you will like to attend? I'm part of many discussions. All of you, we are part of many discussions. Slowly, we are starting. It is better to meet over tea and discuss this because this will give a different dimension. Okay. So technology investment has not happened enough in the productivity space. I'm just giving one example. I was in IBM and I was visiting to the R&D center in Armonk. The scientist who is a Nobel laureate, he was developing a pad of this size, mobile size. And he asked me, you write anything, it will say whether to a greater accuracy of 70%, it will say whether you are false or correct. So I have to write something on the pad and the machine will say whether it is, I'm talking false or I'm talking right. Okay. And he was developing that for 10 years. This is human tech productivity, correct? So when I wrote my, I'm a US citizen, it said false. I tried multiple things, it said false. I tried right things, it said true, okay? So the challenge is how much the whole human race is interested to invest on this human tech, which is unpredictable. Now, with this, what we are looking at, technology, we are performance management system, hiring system, and all these things. We are talking about technology. Okay. Now, if you have to relate this to our technology investment, that is happening mostly for the so-called knowledge workers, white collars. You look at our discussion has started about people who are office going. Are we starting our discussion people who are on the roads, making the roads for us, people who are on the agriculture ground, producing grains for us, or people who are on the trees, trying to do, make needs met for us? Not happening on those lines at all, because you are far away from anything which is called productivity technology related to human aspects. So we are far behind, my friend. That is what my assessment. And I can talk a little more on this, but I think time based on time.
No, which is fair comment. I'm going to go to Jayanta once before I move the topic. Jayanta, what do you see? So you did talk about the fact that you implemented success factors and you went through a full implementation. Then you decided to let go of success factors and embrace Oracle HCM. I've had a dabble with both, right? And do you believe that, and especially now, right? My belief is that these enterprise technologies primarily will become systems of record. And what organizations really need is stuff which is more personalized, more in the moment kind of stuff, which truly personalizes the experience from a people experience standpoint, right? What is your, I don't know how deep you are involved with this, with the HR organization across the group, but what's been your experience? Because none of these tech really is as agile as an Amazon app is or a Netflix app is, right? It customizes, it remembers, recognizes, recommends, it remembers you, it recommends, it reminds you. There are 4 things, right? So it doesn't have all the personalization features because it's a common minimum program that gets developed, right? And Oracle takes its own sweet time to do stuff. And then there is a Workday answer. And now suddenly everybody's talking about ServiceNow being more real because ServiceNow allows you to have workflows which are more in the moment, solve for different stuff. So I don't know whether you can really comment about this, but you are a deep techie. So I'm trying to come to you to see what are you seeing through your lens as advice or direction for HR tech in general and work tech?
I started with people process technology. There is a reason for that. There is no way we can replace human beings. There is no way. Only tech can give the enough input for human to take right decisions or right way to do the business. Also, that is the only thing this one technology can do. And second is a technology per se. If I implement anything without getting into process or people involvement, it's almost like just I implemented one technology and nobody is using that. Correct. There is a change management and multiple things. I don't want to go that way. Why we are talking about SuccessFactors or Oracle SCM today? Okay, there is a set process. It's adopted by multiple people, and there is a how to run a HR function. Just the HR heads are here. There is a process is already defined in that SuccessFactors. That is a base system what you are creating. If you ask me today, when you are implementing any technology, first things in my mind, I don't want to implement technology for technology per se. Detached, how can I increase my external stakeholder, internal stakeholder experience part? That is very important today. Okay, why people are using Amazon app in the personal world, and they're coming here in IT world or corporate world, and there we are asking call help desk to log a call. Just experience. You see what is the difference, and there is a huge push to IT team. Why you are not creating an app within SR where I log a call on using that app on IT related issues or HR related issues, and somebody has to lift the phone within 2 minutes, and I want a IVR telling that press 1 for this, press 2 for this one. There is a huge demand within the corporate also, and that we need to change. We are working towards that. When we are talking SuccessFactors, just I touched the SuccessFactors or Oracle, these are all backend systems where process is already defined. When I'm giving front-end system to my end user or employees, there is an app available. We have a MySR app. In that one, all the applications are available. We trying to become an Amazon or a Flipkart or Urban Cap, that kind of application. And we are trying to that. It's very tough because the process is not fully adopted or there is a change management issue. We are getting there. Ultimate aim for us within SR today is that how I can bring that people's personal experience on corporate world. That is the way we are working. We are not there. It will take some time.
Right.
It's not only IT issue. Technology is available. I'm not telling that technology is not available. Just I was telling Hari, I came from GITEX. GITEX is the largest tech show in Dubai. There are almost 4,000 tech stalls are there. If you see, there are 7 halls. Each hall you need a day to spend to understand the technology, where we are moving, what is the way forward. Okay, one of the experience I was in a Etisalat stall, and they're showcasing flying cars. Okay, and the entire e-commerce way without human being, how we can do entire shopping particularly. So you pick a aloo, you can put it on one of the bin, it will show what is this one. Immediately there's a barcode, it comes out and it's showing payment gateway. Using your app or credit card, you can pay without human being. How we can create a store in e-commerce platform? That is possible. It's possible in next 5 years, 10 years. They're showcasing the future. Okay, if you really ask me. Second part to this one, startup world. Involving startup people are working with the startup companies are very important. In SR world, what we do is that we work with the startup companies. There are 2 ways to do that. If some startup, they got a good idea and they don't have a platform to showcase. What we tell them is that you come and deploy in this particular solution in my environment. Okay, you test this product. If it is successful, I use it for next 2 years, without getting into commercial or whatever it may be. I'm ready to do a reference call. You can showcase outside going, telling that this solution is deployed in SR. And that's a huge marketing tool for you. Working with startup world, startup people is very important. They're very agile. Customization is very quick. Then backend tool, if you have a SuccessFactors or Oracle, you can bolt on that particular solution to bring that experience. That is the part. And in GITEX, I've seen one more thing. There is a startup hall. almost 300 plus startup companies, they're showcasing their product. So major part it is in farming area. Means today farmers, how they will get a real-time information on weather or water requirement or electricity requirement and all those things. The tools are available. How fast we are going to deploy, that is we need to see that. Ultimately, these tools are supporting human being to take right decision. That is my some take here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jayant. That's Sam. Just going to you. I'm going to connect two questions, right? One is if you can respond to say, I'm a big believer that the pandemic proved that those who survived were organizations that were very, very agile. So hierarchies were broken, innovation was accelerated, decision-making was pushed down to the front lines. And therefore organizations thrived. And therefore that is going to be the way of life. So the enterprise systems require a level of stability in business operating model, business model as well as operating models. And these models are now changing drastically with tech disrupting it in the marketplace, and therefore there's huge disruption. So is it the end of the enterprise ERPs, right? If you be, because there's a need of a more agile system. That's one question. And then I want to come to the next question, and you can respond to this one and then get to the next question, which is really to say, you had alluded to various facets of diversity, right? So talk to me about what is your take on what the pandemic has done to this whole IED agenda, and what's working well and what's not working well according to you. Sam, over to you.
Sure. I'll first talk about the enterprise part of it. And when I say this with due humility, I may go wrong here. Jayant is there, absolutely. So he can chip in and add more value to it. But coming back to your question on enterprise vis-a-vis technology disruption, and I'll just take a pause and reach out to Jayant in the example which he gave up, that flying cars, God knows what have you. He's seen that. I wish I could be a part of a similar experience, but set that aside. Now, there are two ways to look at it. Now, when we are talking of technology and this entire pandemic from a softer skills angle, that is where we are talking of AI and integrated machine learning, and even this entire process of actually onboarding employees, or for that matter, if you take a step back, interviewing them and selecting the right candidate would be much aided by technology rather than a human intervention. And we rightly, I believe in that, because in a human interaction process, many a times your views are a little more biased, or there is a risk of being biased, whereas what my little understanding of technology is, when you go to these tools like AI or machine learning and so on and so forth, it's a more democratized process, and the chances of going wrong may be less. And that I fully understand. I just gave that as an example, but all I'm trying to say is, if going back to Sudhanshu's point that right now companies are thinking of bringing back their employees to the workspace, because as of now, the way technology functions in our realm of things is it is more process driven, transaction driven, or rule based rather than the softer sides of it. So when you say this entire process of technology during this pandemic or the disruptive time have pushed in the frontiers of decision making to the lowest level, I'm not really sure how far that is relevant. It may vary across industries or across organizations. However, having said that, going back to my earlier example, where we spoke about technology in context of this etiquette of meetings and where you let everybody hear, that has certainly happened in this new scheme of things. But again, today, like it says that culture beats strategy, right? So even if technology has the nuances of democratizing this process, if you don't have that culture in the organization, it's not going to work. Having said that, I'm not a prophet of doomsday. As I said a little while ago, that technology has all the ammunitions in its fold to democratize this process, and going forward it can happen. But as things stand today, in these 18 months, I don't see too much of that happening. again, looking at enterprise solutions, I think the purpose of enterprise solutions is completely different from the latter part of your question, because enterprise solutions is all about transaction processing. I mean, I'm a chartered accountant. When I started off my career 2.5 decades ago, you would remember there used to be a Babu sort of class of employees, and their core competence lies in actually ensuring data integrity across the various manual records. Now that entire tribe is extinct because of enterprise solutions. So I think both has its own space. I don't see one stepping into the shoes of another. While enterprise solution will continue to do so, whereas the other aspect, what you're talking, that is in the nascent stage, that has to evolve. And maybe in the long term, what you rightly say as a futuristic vision, the boat can merge somewhere and you could have a different vision. That's the first part of the question. Now, second part of the question in terms of diversity and this pandemic, again, I had briefly touched upon that fact that diversity actually from I spoke about the ladies going down in the women workforce going down during the pandemic, and while part of it, as we have all read, is possibly outside our realms of discussion, maybe in the villages or elsewhere where the Manrega or those schemes being limited in scope, and with more and more people migrating from the cities to the villages, so there possibly they tend to lose out. But even in the urban context, what you find is these inordinate long hours, which many of us work, because while we have shifted to technology, the flip side is possibly the work-life balance has gone for a complete toss, because you're expected to be omnipotent, omnipresent like Prometheus. Since you are on technology, every time you're supposed to be on your laptop or maybe on your phone and react to that. And for the ladies, it is becoming more difficult to manage both work at home and work in office. So that requires a complete shift in the mindset of the family. I remember reading an article by Chetan Bhagat a few years ago, where he said that it is more important to have your spouse working because then your children get a different perspective of life, and also from an economic perspective, possibly things can be much better. Just a sec. Whereas you also have to make some compromises in your lifestyle, because you can't possibly expect your spouse to bring the hot roti on your table. And now in this new nuclear family, it is equally important that the men also participate in household chores. But that's a way to go. So in context of pandemic, I'm not very sure how diversity has been impacted. But again, on the question of diversity, my view is slightly different. While gender is an important step in this entire process of diversity, and given the current numbers in India, which I had alluded a little while ago, we are still at the bottom of the pyramid and we need to make substantial progress. But if we see the diversity lens in a silo by putting on blinkers only through the gender perspective, I think we are making a big mistake. Across most multinationals, they also view diversity from a standpoint of nationality. Now, we had a very interesting conversation in our leadership team meeting. Now, I was advocating, while from a Europe perspective, across countries, diversity could be a way of, nationality could be a way of looking at diversity. From an Indian perspective, we are like 26 different nations. I'm from the eastern part of it. You may be from the northern part. Somebody may be from the southern part, and our cultural nuances are completely different. So why can't that be one context of diversity in a country like India? And there was another colleague of mine. He said, we have had enough of the caste system. The last thing I want is to look at diversity from the lens of a Marathi versus Bengali versus a Gujarati versus a Tamil or whatever. And he had possibly a point. So I don't know where we go there, but I'm putting up this example that diversity could also be looked at a broader lens. Again, going back to diversity and this pandemic, experience is also one of the lenses of diversity. I mean, in the same team, you could have a 25-year-old young Turk, as well as somebody in the mid 30s who has spent 10, 15 years, and somebody very senior, maybe 40, 45 or 50-ish, who had seen a lot in the industry. So I think in context of the betterment of the organization, that sort of diversity is also equally important. Having said that, in context of the pandemic, what has possibly happened is both at the bottom as well as the top has been impacted much more. Sudhanshu, and you can comment better. My sense is people at the middle have possibly been relatively more secured, because people who are good have moved up or whatever, or they have taken a pay cut. Of course, if performance is another issue, that's beside the point. But having said that, it is more people at the bottom and at the top who have been more impacted rather than people at the middle. The Buddhist philosophy of mid-path, you may say that that's what had panned out during the pandemic. And before I pause on this question, the last part, which is close to my heart, is in context of diversity, is again not in also maybe it has its own nuance with respect to the pandemic, is this entire new kid on the block known as the sexual orientation of people, and that bringing in the lens of diversity, where you call them the queer page or the LGBT community. I think in Indian context, this was absolutely taboo. It was illegal. Why I raise that point is, again, not so much with respect to that section of the society, because they are certainly important, but what I want to say is, in this context, why I bring them up for discussion is, there is an element of the marginalized section in our society. Again, in context of this pandemic and in context of diversity, I think possibly they have been the most impacted rather than people who are relatively well off. So that would be my take on this.
Thank you very much. I think, Sam, you bring a very valid point, right? I think knowingly or unknowingly, there is an element of inclusion and exclusion that has happened through the pandemic. And I think it's got far more accentuated. Now, one school of thought, like you rightly said, is maybe the raise the hand is a feature that's available for people to comment. But there are people who genuinely, if you were to be in a room, you would call on people to say, hey, do you have a point of view? Do you have a thought here? But in a virtual environment, it becomes that much more difficult to ask every person who is online to comment on. That's first. Second, I think is what ends up happening in a virtual world is those serendipitous moments when you're bumping against somebody at the coffee vending machine or the cafeteria, where in the moment ideas spark, those are now missing. And the chances are, who will you call? You will call people that you're most comfortable with. And therefore, the chances are that the network that you need to be successful is pretty restricted because of the pandemic. So one school of thought, yeah, coming back to work is great. My belief, Sudhanshu, to some degree is this is a flavor of the month, a flavor of a couple of months. Suddenly you will see people are tired of working from home. Everybody will come to work and suddenly you will realize, shit, we don't have so much real estate because we have surrendered 15-20% real estate. लोगों को बैठने के लिए जगह नहीं है. And why the hell are so many people coming? We are suddenly incurring so much facility management cost. Maybe there is a percentage of people we should be working from home. Let's go back to getting those people to work from home. So I think that pendulum, in my mind, will swing back very soon in another 3 months' time. ये थोड़ा flavor of the season है. Leadership team members feel everybody needs to be at work. तो थोड़ा होता है, होगा. The compounded problem with that also is when people are working in a hybrid environment, the chances are that are managers really conscious of people who are not working from office? Because the chances are, if I am sitting opposite Jayanta's room, Jayanta has a comfort saying, Urmesh, come here, I want to talk to you about this. I have differentiated information because I am coming into work every day. And possibly Sayam doesn't have that information. Both of us at the same career level. But because I have differentiated information, I am more successful because I am available enough. So I think that in general is causing some inclusion and exclusion. So Sudhanshu, coming to you, what are you seeing as impact on the IND agenda because of what has happened? And how do you see that play out into the future?
Unmesh, if I may take a minute
Go ahead.
before Sudhanshu comes in, the
Sorry,
point
go
which
ahead, go ahead, sir.
what you raised is very interesting. I will say something completely unrelated to the discussion. My wife is in the teaching profession, and this entire concept of coming back to office versus staying, I thought I'll just give this example because this is relevant in this context. This is a peculiar dichotomy. The children want to come back to school for obvious reasons, but the parents are hesitant. So forget as employees, we want to come back to office because we want a career progression and a differentiated level of information. But even if you look at your kids, at the end of the day, human beings love social interaction and company. So I think that is something missing. And that was a point which I highlighted a little while ago. Till technology brings in through the virtual reality world that element of human interaction in this entire process, it's a no-brainer. As you said, this would be a flavor of the season or the flavor of 1.5 years, and it will die its natural death once things stabilize. Sorry for being a little interruptive.
No worries. Sudhanshu, over to you.
Unmesh, if I want to add a point before what he adds, means,
Okay, go ahead.
so sorry for this.
Sudhanshu, you have more time to get your thoughts together.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things what we are seeing now. See, we run an IT company, and we are we are asking employees to come to office because of multiple reasons. That human touch, human interaction, there is a different productivity or whatever that happens. And today, what is happening in Gen X people, they're attending office for last 1 month. Means they want to come to office, they want to meet people, and a lot of things are happening. Means if you're mid-level, if somebody got 15-20 years of experience, he is hesitant, telling that boss, if I come, this happens, that happens, I have that issue, that issue. See, what we have done, we conducted 2 days engagement activity. One day we kept all the football matches, okay, and we created some senior team, junior team, and everything. Yesterday we kept a whole day cricket match, okay, box cricket. And attendance, we told that at least for this one you need to attend, kind of thing. If you see the overall attendance perspective, 100% people are attended. And end of the day, I asked boss, are you going to come office from Monday? Then that comfort is that he's telling boss, now since 2 days I'm out and I started playing and everything, okay, Monday onwards I'll be in office. It's one of the example of what we've done differently. Just I was sharing it. So right way, wrong way, that is a different thing. We thought that is the right way, and we have gone ahead with that.
Very interesting.
Great. I mean, I completely agree. Look, I think there is a need, and like I'm taking off from what Sandeep said, right? People are social animals, and we need to have that social context. But I think finally we need to give our employees some say in deciding or having a voice into how we shape work going forward. I think, so for example, it's very likely you and I are working in the same role or say similar roles, but your personal situation is very different to my personal situation, right? I may have elder care needs at home, and therefore I may need to be at home, or my spouse is working and a traveling job. I have young kids that I need to support. So you and I could have very different needs. The question is, can I be productive in a hybrid environment where I can come to work 2 or 3 times, right? So anyway, Sudhanshu, coming to you and your comments, you had some more time to reflect on this.
Sure. Thank you. It is always difficult when you have time to reflect and the people talk the same points what you feel like talking. Okay, so, but it's very interesting question also. Let me actually change the coin a little bit. Actually, this diversity and knowing, unless you are in HR and I have been in HR. The diversity is always looked at from category of people, But diversity, if you look at from the biases. Suppose I'm biased because you have grown beard and I'm growing beard. Okay, if I get that bias, and if I get a bias that you are sitting in the office and I'm sitting in a hotel or I'm sitting, so bias is going to stay continuously with the human mind actually. Now, suppose you have to work on removing this bias from the culture aspect. That means we will look at task as task, action as action, and people who are performing those tasks as people who are performing. If we have to look at from that lens, many of our agenda related to diversity will be actually simpler. I'm just giving some examples what I'm trying to do because of this pandemic, and it is not that new. I have been interacting with many of my peer colleagues in the industries. Everybody, at least I know 50% of people have started doing like that. Now, because of pandemic, some companies said challenges to maintain the business, and it has impacted some of the employment opportunity. But what they have done, when it has started growing, they're taking people on part-time. Same people, they're taking on part-time. Can you work for 2 hours? That means you can manage the need at home, and you are also productive, and you're doing this. Now, what is that going to happen? The moment you start looking at people who are doing tasks as people, not as a gender, not as a sex-oriented person, or not as a person with different geography, or a person with disability, you are looking at only from the lens, okay, these are people who will be doing tasks for us. Now, there are two kinds of tasks, all of us will agree. There will be pure mechanical tasks, which is, you can define, do A, B, C, D, like this. And there will be pure tasks which are competency in nature, okay, which will be in the mind of the person, which will be really thought process, thinking task, or conceptual task, or which are closer to this AI and machine learning type of task. So there are two type of tasks. Now, as an industry, the entire industry have to move. How do we really define tasks, and how can we create smaller jobs out of each of the tasks? That means, rather than defining 8 hours a day, can you define the task? Okay, it will be completed in 2 hours. Anybody can come and complete that. The moment we will do that, the diversity as an area will go away. Otherwise, we will be playing, I'm victim of that, and I'm doing that. We have a diversity lead, and she will be focused on this, hiring like this or hiring like that, maintaining a celebration day like this. If you look at this entire activity are nonsense, if you don't take out the bias of looking people from the aspect of they are here to do certain tasks. If I'm there with John's team and he needs only somebody segregating his mails, okay, and that is required for half an hour a day, and he knows that, okay, Sudhanshu will come, or Unmesh comes, or Samdev comes, or Deepak comes, anybody comes, they will complete in half an hour. Goes. Where is the gender? Where is the sexual preferences, or where is the color? Where is the nationality? Nothing comes there actually. You start respecting people for the work they will do. That aspect is not coming. What we are actually creating again, all of us are Indian, fortunately here. Again, you are creating this quota system. I have started seeing, okay, these positions can be managed with female gender. Let us hire only female. Irrespective of good talent available from the male, they will not hire. Now, I have seen few companies, they have reservation, they've created reservation for senior positions which will be managed by gender diversity. Similarly, they have reservation for geographical diversity. So they will have one black person holding that position. So I think, if we can really focus on tasks and create smaller tasks so that we know that, okay, it is manageable with this, and somewhere thinking tasks, you have to identify people who will manage that. That is where I think, the entire concept of diversity have to evolve, and the industry leadership have to accept that as a diversity, rather than, you have to have somebody, my direct report, one female should be there. Why one female? Why not one person with disability? Why not a person who is part-time? So in fact, you won't believe, last 1 year, I must have engaged 100 people with part-time jobs. When you engage with part-time jobs, what you're looking at? You're looking at whether that person will complete that task or not, whether necessity to come to office or not, necessity to come to the field or not. You will have to look at a task in different aspects to take out this diversity as a thinking process right now, which is going on in minds.
Sure.
That is what.
Sure. Deepak, you were trying to come into the comments?
No, I just wanted to appreciate Sudhanshu's point, because we do a multiple conversations. Almost there are like 4 or 5 conversations happening every week with the C-level leadership, and people question where is the women gender out there, but I think, Sudhanshu, you brought it beautifully, right? It has to be a diversity of minds rather than a diversity of gender. And if we start understanding this, and we're still not understanding that, and we're still creating that quota system, as you rightly said. I mean, even in today's conversation, we're talking about diversity. We don't have a women on the panel, but we got 3 leaders or 4 leaders who are from a different field of work altogether, technology and HR or finance or operations. And that just brings a diversity of mind. One has to start putting that thought process. So I just wanted to appreciate your point, Sudhanshu, that very well said. And I'm very much with you when you say that it has to be diversity of mind and not a quota system of a gender outlet. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Great, Sudhanshu. I want to shift the conversation slightly. And I think, Sandy, I'm going to come to you again to start with this. I think a lot of the stuff around IED, inclusion, equity, diversity, is also about culture of the organization, right? And I think we have seen with the multi-generations that exist in the corporate world, and the pandemic, for one, for sure, has proven that organizations that have a purposeful purpose are places where people really want to be and want to thrive in. So talk to me about, where do you see, how do you engage people in a world that we are getting into, right? Where the generation that's coming in wants to work with an organization that's clearly doing a fabulous job on its responsibility towards purpose and planet equally. And what's your suggestion around managing the pulse of people to see if our people are genuinely happy? Are they genuinely engaged? What's your thought around that, Sam?
Okay, on this entire concept of ESG, you know where I'm coming from, sustainability, you briefly touched upon that. I was on another panel on CII where we were discussing in terms of total cost of ownership. And one of the views which came up is ESG is a more expensive proposition. Okay. Why I raised that context here is in this context of diversity, we spoke, it's not a simply gender, and I spoke about experience and sexual preference as well. Similarly, when it comes to engagement, we should not see only from the lens of what will attract the employees in our organization, because then it will be a very truncated view and it will not be the right perspective. I know one marketing view is jo dikhta hai wahi bikta hai, but I think in the long run those are quick fixes and doesn't work out. So I think the first focus for an organization is, how do you actually treat your customers or consumers, or what is the philosophy of the organization, as you rightly put it. Why I put customers and consumer first ahead of everything else, because at the heart of the business, we are here to serve them. Now, in that context, if you are a socially conscious organization, and we can share with you in our context this concept of Alcobev products in PET bottles. Now, that could be a very lucrative proposition from the perspective of cost dimension. Of course, having said that, that has also its limitations, but set that aside. But we have consciously taken that call that we will not tread that path because that is not good for the planet. Just to give you an example. So I think what you profess as your organizational philosophy, that is what, whether it's your employees or your suppliers or your customers, or for the society as large, that is what you have viewed. Okay. The second mistake, what we often do is when we are thinking of what to do in terms of engagement, we overemphasize the fact on the Gen X, Gen Y, or Gen Z, whatever you call it. While they are a critical piece in this entire conundrum, and unless you have the right philosophy or the right principles, you will not get good people to join the organization. But what happens is, if you are only concentrating that part of the pyramid, okay, you are a very progressive organization, you profess certain values, you attract the right talent, and they come into your organization. But the moment they come into the organization, if the overall culture in the organization is not that progressive to embrace what you are professing, then what happens? you see a young enthusiastic group of people joining the organization, but their seniors or the mentors are on a different plane or a different platform from them. So the important thing is you have to be consistent in your philosophy, if for a lack of a better word, and more importantly, that should be deeply embedded in your organization. Only then it's a question of engagement of your new employees. Otherwise, if your existing employees itself don't profess your philosophy or are not wedded to your philosophy, then the entire thing falls flat.
No, get it. Sudhanshu, coming to you on this one, right? Talk to me about employee listening methods, right? And the reason I say that is because we used to traditionally have the employee engagement survey, which good, bad, ugly, gave whatever it gave. I'm a proponent believer that the once a year employee survey is not a good indicator of the health of the organization. We need something which is more in the moment, in the flow kind of stuff. But talk to me about employee engagement, the changing face of employee engagement, and how do managers keep a pulse of how happy your employee, how engaged their workforce is?
Thank you. This is a very close subject to my heart because I'm an employee. Throughout last 25 years, I've been an employee. So I will put into two sets of discussion. One is as an employee, if I have to look at plainly why I'm going to office. Okay? I go to office if I'm excited and I'm clear that what I have to do. Then I'm enjoying. If I'm clear what I have to achieve, still then it is a little better for me. And it is, if you look at it, it's all selfish for me. As an individual employee, I'm clear about my role, I'm clear about my goal, and I know if I achieve, I'll get some money or I'll get some reward. This is purely individual for me. This is a prime reason I keep going to office daily. The second part is if my colleagues are good to me and I'm good to my colleagues. That's the second pillar, I think. But first pillar is actually, if I have to put a percentage, 70% of my motivation to go to office is if I'm clear about what I have to do, what I achieve, and what I get. Second part is my colleagues, seniors, juniors, all. Do they really respect me? Do they really help me? Vice versa. The third part is the organization. Does the organization have a great name, good governance system, culture, and all? So I little bit differ on what Sandip just mentioned. As an employee, selfish individual, human being, and I'm talking out of my interaction with thousands of employees over the last many years. These are the three pillars actually we get attracted. Now, in this, I'm just relating. If you look at the first pillar, the great connect is with the manager or my direct reports. Am I clear on my role, goals? Continuous dialogue, if it is not happening, once in a year is not continuous at all. Am I really continuing to get guidance on my role and goal? Because human being is like that. I will not be satisfied with my set of thinking. I will always try to clarify and all. So my manager should be there to listen to me and also to guide me. Similarly, my manager should be there to appreciate me or recognize me as the outcome of my task being well done. So the first pillar is very, very important for a engaged workforce related to productivity, because organizations are here to do a business, and the business is productivity, linked to productivity. So that's my role and goal. The second part is little important for people to actually keep thinking that they're part of a larger system. Now I'm trying to, second and third part, I'm trying to relate to what Sandip had just mentioned. See, I'm there as a social human being. Am I interacting and people are respecting me, irrespective of my gender, irrespective of my background, irrespective of my qualification, performance? Do I have really good people? They respect my performance. They respect what my views are, or they are not there. I'm upset if somebody doesn't listen to me in one meeting. I'm upset if somebody gives a rude comment to me. So those actually affects my engagement. But the third part, which is I think 10% where people get attracted to join a organization, is mostly the value of the organization, credential of the organization, I'm just why I'm bringing this last part. If you look at, there are a lot of kirana shops, maybe few lakhs of kirana shops in the country. Every kirana shop has a employee who is there for the life. You know, they join that kirana shop and they serve for the life. They are also employees. If you look at in the broader context, why do they are there? Because the kirana shop owner takes care of that person. That's why they are for the life. So if you have to extrapolate, you know, somebody joins and stays in the organization for these three buckets. First is the selfish bucket. This is one side, but the other side, now I'm reflecting to the other side of the set. You know, all employees, they fall into these three buckets. They are inspired. That means they are related. They are relating to the organization's vision and you know, passionate about this. When they are inspired, they are restless till the time they achieve. Even they achieve for 40 years, they will be restless doing that. You know, if you look at many organizations are successful for because of this restless, inspired employees. The second lot, which is one, they're enjoyed, they're engaged, and they're very much enjoying the job. Okay. So they will do whatever is required, but they need guidance and all, they will do that. The third lot, either satisfied or dissatisfied, they will be only doing tasks because they want to earn. So now the bigger challenge is, are we hiring people for the inspired lot, for the engaged lot, or the satisfied lot? Unfortunately, our hiring systems, now I'm relating to your first chapter, technology, our hiring systems, our hiring mechanism, and hiring managers are not really poised to do that. I've said through, I think, because of your and my role, we must have said through thousands of interviews. Most of our business managers, including many CEOs I've said through, their questions, their interactions are not meant to hire inspired employees. Very rarely I've seen. They hire mostly people who are at the action level. You know, do you know how the calculation? Do you know, have you done that settlement? Have you done this, separation, or have you done that work on the machines? So we hire people for the satisfied and dissatisfied lot, and we expect them to connect to the larger target. So with these two sets, for my thinking of engagement is, one is I am a selfish individual as an employee, so I will look at my lens like this. But if you are hiring somebody in these three sets, then you are achieving. Many people, companies are successful because they will hire inspired and engaged employees. So I think I will rest my case.
No, I think very, very well said. I truly believe that the generation that's coming in now, it's really about tours of duty, right? Like Reid Hoffman says, people are in organizations for a point in time, period of time. Whilst they're with the organization, I think it's imperative on both sides that they make the most of the journey as an employee, because they pick up the right skills and make an impact and leave a legacy. And from an employer standpoint, the virtue is really about saying, can I create an ecosystem where I can unleash the potential? And therefore, role for us as leaders is really to be able to, you speak to inspire and you listen to learn, right? I think that's going to be very, very integral in this. Jayanta, coming to you, I think possibly we're almost on the hour now, but last comments around this whole space of employee engagement and listening to employee feedback, and the role of technology, according to you, to be able to allow managers to get an essence of this. Quickly, if you can try and wrap this, and then we are pretty much handed back to Team CEO Lounge.
Yeah. See, this one, when you are talking employee engagement and taking a feedback, means if you ask me, means I'm in SR for last 24 years now. Earlier, I used to get a link telling that you give me a feedback about your lot of things, lot of questions, 100 questions, and we used to do that on a yearly basis. Today, I think employee engagement, I am a CEO also, means what we are thinking, we are not fully adopted. See, employee feedback, it has to be instance. It can't be yearly basis or quarterly basis or monthly basis. Means if you are not addressing that particular issue within a day, then he is going to be unsatisfied employee. Means, that is my first take. And for that one, we need to adopting technology the only way. Means taking a feedback, it can't be a one web URL. There are multiple ways we can do that. Means that we are working towards today. And second to think this digital means everybody is talking technology is secondary today. As per me, if you ask me a technology guy, digital is a way forward for multiple reasons. One is that new age companies coming in your particular vertical means today you are not competing with the corporates. Means there are a lot of new age companies getting into your this one vertical, and they're competing using technology. That is the first thing. Second thing is that attracting parameter means today attracting any employee, one of the parameters, not the major one, one of the parameter is that what technology you use internally. Means, today we are telling, are you using SAP? Just an example. If you are using a Tally, he think that boss, if I work in Tally for next 5 years, means I'm nowhere. Means I want to use SAP or any other cutting edge tool so that I'll build my career, I'll build my overall experience on that. That is the second one. Third is the competitive. Means today looking at the competitive in the market, means digital is the way forward, and digital adoption, it is happening in multiple ways. Means some corporate, these are depends on which vertical you are in. Banking, insurance, and other vertical, they are using digital a big way. And corporate adoption is increased after COVID. And last 18 months, people are learned and they have changed their thought process. And we see that there is a digital adoption happening everywhere.
No, I think very valid points, Jayant. I think clearly, as I look at this whole space of employee engagement, I think the social contract between the employer and employee clearly has shifted. I think now not only is the employee just important, but it's important that the employee is in peak performance by virtue of physical peak performance, emotional peak performance, mental faculties being at peak performance, as well as financial peak performance. Right? I think energies, all four energies, physical energy, emotional energy, mental energy, financial energy, all need to be at the right place for an employee to be truly productive and as agile to meet the changing needs of business. And not only is that, I think organizations have now extended that to the community, like the House of Tatas, etc., traditionally used to do. Right now, the employee and the employee's ecosystem, his family becomes equally more important. And I believe there is a role for technology. And I think we can become high tech. We can become high tech so that we can become more high touch, so that we can free up our HR folks and our business managers to really get access to as much information as possible, so that they can truly engage in meaningful conversations with their employees and truly create a compelling value proposition and a compelling experience for them in their tour of duty. Technology has a role, but I believe it's an enablement role. Finally, like Sanju said and Sudhanshu said, and all of you have said, it's the edge in human resources that's the most important element. On that note, Deepak, we're on the hour, handing it back to you for a wrap up.
Oh, thank you very much. You wrapped up beautifully, Mesh, and me adding anything into this would not be justified. So, gentlemen, thank you very much. I think it was a wonderful conversation, and I hope to see you all of you very, very soon and in person. And have a great week and enjoy yourself. Have a wonderful Diwali. Happy Diwali to all of you. And Mesh, thanks for moderating it so beautifully and bringing the best out of everyone. I think very well moderated and a great insightful conversation.